How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here from GN Tech, and welcome to a camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. So I'm recording this from the front-facing cameras on both of these smartphones at 4K resolution, and this will give you a better understanding of the front-facing video that both of these cameras can capture. Not only that, you can also judge dynamic range as well as stabilization, but also the audio that the microphones are picking up. So this will give you a total understanding of whether these phones will be suited for vlogging or not. But with that being said, I'm now going to move into the primary camera samples, which include photos and videos in different environments to give you an overall picture of both of these smartphones. So if you look at both the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus and the Galaxy S10 Plus, their cameras are actually very similar with minor changes. Of course, the Note 10 Plus adds the additional depth vision sensor at the back, but the S10 Plus has that dual camera selfie setup. So how do both of these phones fare in day-to-day photos and video samples? Here's a pretty simple photo from both phones. The differences here are minuscule at best, but I do think the Note 10 Plus image is a tad more saturated while the S10 Plus's sample sways slightly towards the overexposed side. This was a great situation to test the scene optimizer modes on both phones, where you can clearly see the S10 Plus doing a bit too much in terms of saturation of colors. I think the Note 10 Plus maintains a more natural photo here, even though some might say the bright greens from the S10 Plus are visually better. In a more challenging scenario with dynamic range coming into play, the Note 10 Plus has a slight advantage, but it really isn't much over the S10 Plus. Enabling scene optimizer mode once again here improves the overall quality of the image a lot more. And while the sun is blown out on the S10 Plus, it maintains a better exposure in the foreground, especially in the shrubs. The Note 10 Plus though has better detail on the tree bark and in between the branches of the tree, indicating a superior dynamic range. Here's an image with the sky as the background, and what you notice is how each phone processes colors differently. The Note 10 Plus's colors are accurate, whereas the S10 Plus tries to brighten up the image a bit more than necessary, making it lose some detail. Trying out the 0.5 times wide-angle lenses on both phones, the one clear difference is in sharpness and detail. The Note 10 Plus's image is a lot sharper and clear compared to the S10 Plus's softer image that loses out on details. Now I threw in this image because it gives you a fair idea of the Note 10 Plus's camera capabilities. It captures more detail in the foreground and in the trees, and it captures the yellow tones of the sky more accurately. It also has a nice reflection of the building on the right, which makes the Note 10 Plus's overall photo just that bit better over the S10 Plus's. So how about both the phones when it comes to zooming in and out of a subject? Here at 1x zoom, to me the Note 10 Plus's image stands out as being sharper with better colors. Moving into 2x zoom, this is the maximum optical zoom each phone can exhibit, and again the Note 10 Plus just looks superior to me because of the color processing, although in terms of clarity both photos are pretty much neck and neck. Here's the sample at 3x zoom, where it's much of the same story, but at 5x zoom you start to see more detail from the building on the Note 10 Plus's sample, although it isn't drastically different. And to round up, at 10x zoom we can tell that the Note 10 Plus is just better able to maintain detail over the S10 Plus. Moving to portrait mode, I think both photos are doing almost an identical job. The Note 10 Plus sways more towards the brighter looking photo, whereas the S10 Plus has slightly yellow and darker tones. I think the S10 Plus is actually handling dynamic range from the background better here, and to be honest, it is quite difficult to pick a clear winner. But when using the wide-angle lens for portraits, the story is a bit different. Here the Note 10 Plus is definitely superior when it comes to skin tone processing. The S10 Plus continues to be on the darker side, but here it does not look that good. Both phones have their flaws with edge detection if you look closely, but they're doing an adequate job. Next is using the same portrait mode for objects, where the results are quite identical. But both phones seem to be struggling with edge detection. The Note 10 Plus on the top right, whereas the S10 Plus towards the nose area of the bird. Trying out the wide-angle lens on both in this situation, there's some problems. I wouldn't use either of these images to post online, and I think with such results, Samsung may need to work a bit more on their software when it comes to edge detection in portrait mode, especially when you're taking photos of objects. Rounding up on the daytime samples are selfies, where between these two, the only difference is a very slight variation of color. The S10 Plus keeps it more natural, whereas the Note 10 Plus introduces some purple tones on my face. Both phones have a wide-angle selfie mode, where here the Note 10 Plus is definitely able to maintain more natural facial tones. Using the portrait mode, the results are pretty identical once again, but using the wide-angle portrait mode does make the Note 10 Plus struggle a bit with skin tones, and it's because of this that I prefer the S10 Plus's overall photo. I don't know if it's just my Galaxy Note 10 Plus, but taking portraits and getting the effect to work on the Note 10 Plus was a bit more of a struggle compared to the S10 Plus, and that could have something to do with the dual cameras on the front on the S10 Plus. Now let's move to night samples, where naturally the Note 10 Plus seems to be doing a better job with detail overall, especially with how it handles light exposure. Each phone's night mode does an impressive job, and to be honest, you get pretty identical results from both. Here's a look at a scenario which has more light in the night, and the Note 10 Plus just seems to get a bit more detail due to its brighter image. And in this case, night mode doesn't make a major difference, with both phones performing on par. But here there is a difference between both the images, with the Note 10 Plus able to pick up the color variations in the tree. Night mode significantly improves detailing in both images, with the Note 10 Plus looking just that bit more sharper, but the improvement from the normal to the night mode on the S10 Plus is very impressive. Using the wide-angle lens here shows how much sharper the Note 10 Plus image is, both with detail in the foreground and background. Night mode naturally looks a lot better on the Note 10 Plus given the phone's naturally sharp lens. And finishing up here, let's take a look at night selfies. I think the Note 10 Plus's sample better captures detail, especially in my hair and beard, but both phones still lack that sharpness to them. This sharpness is captured with the front camera's night mode capability on the Note 10 Plus, and while sharp, I still think it needs some work before selfies look natural. The Note 10 Plus though seems much better with portrait selfies at night, where the S10 Plus actually seems to be struggling with quality. Again, both these have a wide-angle selfie mode which are identical, and again you can use the selfie night mode on the wide-angle lens. Portraits with the wide-angle camera are not much of a competition though, with the Note 10 Plus taking it in this case. Moving to video, we'll start with 1080p footage. The Note 10 Plus's video has a higher dynamic range and better exposure, but stabilization is about the same from both. This footage is 1080p once again using the wide-angle lens, and here the sharpness we talked about when comparing images comes into play. The Note 10 Plus footage looks a lot better, and stabilization seems to be a bit better too. 1080p footage when running is not the best stability from either, which is a bit underwhelming to be honest, and the same can be said when using the wide-angle lens, and I just wish the stability was better in this case. Now, there is a super steady mode on both these phones, but the change is that the Note 10 Plus supports both standard angle and wide-angle mode now. Comparing the normal angle Note 10 Plus footage to the default S10 Plus super steady footage shows how much of a difference this mode makes. Even with the wide-angle lens, footage is a lot more stable than before, and because of the Note 10 Plus's sharper looking video, it just makes for the overall better quality. With 4K footage, it seems to me like the S10 Plus is getting the exposure better if you look at the background for example, although stabilization has pretty much no difference. 4K footage when running at the normal angle also shows a better sharpness from the S10 Plus's camera, and again stabilization is not that much different. 4K wide-angle footage though is a lot clearer from the Note 10 Plus's wide-angle lens, which just makes for better quality. Now both phones can also record 4K 60fps footage, and here's that side by side, where video is a lot smoother but does not have any stabilization to it, thus making it very jittery. During the night, both phones' camera qualities for 1080p video deteriorate heavily. In spite of the sharper wide-angle lens on the Note 10 Plus, the quality from both cameras is about the same. Testing the stabilization for each quality would yield similar results as during the day, but I was curious to test out the super steady mode only on both phones, and the results were pretty bad. 4K video looked a bit sharper than 1080p footage, and definitely with the normal angle lens, footage is usable, but unless you're in plenty of light using the wide angle lens for 4K video at night, stay away from using it, especially if you're brisk walking or running, because the quality takes a massive hit. But there you have it, a pretty comprehensive look at both the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus and the S10 Plus's core camera capabilities. Let us know which phone you prefer down in the comments. Make sure to subscribe for more videos to come, and thanks for watching. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.